The night the bond awakened, Alpha King Caedid Vorenholt was standing on the highest balcony of Blackthorn Castle, looking out over the dark forest that belonged to him. For years he had waited for this moment. Every alpha waited for it. The moment his wolf would rise inside his chest and tell him, at last, who his mate was. When it came, it did not feel like joy. It felt like a blade turning in his ribs. The pull was strong, stronger than anything he had felt before, dragging his senses across the border, past the river, into the broken lands that belonged to his enemy. Cade gripped the stone railing until it cracked beneath his fingers. His mate was in Ravenwood territory. His mate was near Draven Ashford, the man he had exiled 7 years ago, the man he had once called brother, before everything fell apart between them. He told himself it meant nothing. Perhaps she was simply passing through. Perhaps fate had made a mistake. But fate does not make mistakes, and by morning, Cade would learn the truth was far worse than he imagined. Her name was Elara Voss, and she did not know, not yet, that she was about to become the reason 2 kingdoms of wolves would either destroy each other or finally find peace. Elara had grown up far from pack politics, raised by a quiet grandmother in a cabin at the edge of the woods, taught to heal wounds with herbs and steady hands rather than to fight. She knew she was different. She had always healed faster than she should. She had always heard the forest speak to her in ways other humans could not, but she never knew why. Not until the day Draven Ashford stumbled into her cabin, bleeding from an ambush, and their eyes met for the first time. The moment his gaze found hers, something inside her chest cracked open like a seed splitting to grow. She did not understand the warmth that spread through her, the sudden certainty that this stranger mattered to her more than anyone ever had. She only knew that when he looked at her, really looked at her, the loneliness she had carried her whole life quietly disappeared. Draven felt it too, and it terrified him. He had spent 7 years surviving on anger alone, exiled from his home, stripped of his rank, hunted more than once by the very king he had once sworn his life to protect. He had nothing left to offer a mate, no pack of his own that trusted him fully, no safety to promise her. And yet, when her scent wrapped around him like sunlight breaking through storm clouds, he knew there was no walking away from her, no matter what it cost him. He healed in her small cabin for 3 days, and in those 3 days, something quiet and honest grew between them. She asked him nothing about his past. He asked her nothing about her strange gifts. They simply existed together, 2 broken pieces settling into place. It was on the 3rd night that the mark appeared on her wrist, a pale silver crescent that glowed faintly in the moonlight. Draven stared at it in silence, his throat tight. "What does it mean?" Elara asked, tracing the mark with her fingers. "It means you are mine," he said quietly, "and I am yours, for as long as either of us lives." She did not run from those words. She only reached for his hand and held it, as if she had been waiting her whole life to hear them. Neither of them knew that far across the border, the Alpha King had felt that same bond awaken, and had already begun making plans to take back what he believed belonged to him. Cade arrived at the border 3 days later with 20 of his best warriors. He told himself this was simply pack law, simply the natural right of an alpha to claim his mate. He refused to admit, even to himself, that the thought of Draven touching her, protecting her, loving her, made something ancient and violent rise inside his chest. When his warriors found the cabin, Draven was already waiting outside the door, standing between them and the woman he loved. "She is not yours, Cade," Draven said, his voice steady despite the fear tightening in his stomach. "The bond does not lie. You know that better than anyone." Cade's eyes burned gold, his wolf pressing hard against his control. "The bond made a mistake." "The bond does not make mistakes," Draven said. "You taught me that yourself, before you became a man who only believes the things that serve him." The words struck deeper than Draven intended. For a moment, something flickered across Cade's face. Something almost like the boy he used to be before the crown, before the war, before betrayal turned his heart to stone. But the moment passed, and the king ordered his men forward. What followed was not a battle Draven could win through strength alone. He was outnumbered, exiled, weakened by years without a pack to stand behind him. But he did not run. He placed himself in front of Elara again and again, taking blows meant for her, refusing to let a single warrior get close enough to touch her. Ilara, though untrained in combat, was not helpless. She used her knowledge of the forest to slow their attackers, throwing herbs that stung the eyes, guiding Draven toward hidden paths only she knew. Together, wounded and exhausted, they escaped into the deep woods as the sun began to rise. That night, hiding in a cave lit only by a small fire, Ilara finally asked the question that had been building inside her for days. Why does the Alpha King want me so badly? He does not even know me. Draven was quiet for a long moment, staring into the flames. Because you are not just anyone, Ilara. Your grandmother never told you the truth about your bloodline, did she? Ilara shook her head slowly. You are the last descendant of the first wolf, Draven said. The original bloodline our kind came from, long before packs divided into kingdoms and kings began fighting over land. There is an old prophecy, one most wolves think is only a legend now. It says that when the last of that bloodline finds her true mate and completes the binding beneath the old moon tree, the ancient war between our kind will finally end, forever. Ilara stared at him, stunned. And Cade knows this? Cade has known for years, Draven said, bitterness sharpening his voice. He is the reason I was exiled, not because I betrayed him, as everyone believes, but because I discovered the truth of the prophecy before he did, and he could not risk anyone finding you before he could control the outcome himself. He needed the wolf who fulfilled the prophecy to be bonded to him, not to someone he could not command. So he destroyed my reputation, stripped away everything I had, and let the world believe I was a traitor. Ilara reached for his hand, her heart aching for the years of pain he had carried silently. You protected me tonight, even though you had every reason to hate what I represent. I did not protect the prophecy, Draven said softly, lifting her hand to his chest. I protected you. That is the only truth that matters to me. Tears filled Ilara's eyes, but for the first time since this nightmare began, she did not feel afraid. She felt certain. They did not have long to rest. By dawn, Cade's warriors had picked up their trail again, and this time, the king himself led the hunt, driven by an obsession he could no longer control. The final confrontation came at the edge of the old moon tree, an ancient oak said to be as old as the first wolves themselves, its silver bark glowing faintly beneath the fading stars. It was no accident that Ilara's instincts had led them there. Something inside her, some quiet call from her bloodline, had guided her feet the entire night. Cade stepped into the clearing alone, ordering his warriors to stay back. Whatever pride remained in him demanded he face his enemy without an army at his back, even now. This ends tonight, Cade said, his eyes locked on Draven. Step aside, and I will let you live. I will not, Draven answered, standing firm in front of Ilara. You can take my life, Cade, but you will not take her. For a moment, it seemed the fight was inevitable, two wolves ready to tear each other apart beneath the ancient tree. But Ilara stepped forward, placing herself beside Draven rather than behind him, refusing to let him carry this burden alone. You already know how this ends, Cade, she said, her voice steady despite the trembling in her chest. The mark does not lie. I am his, not because a prophecy demanded it, but because my heart chose him. No crown can change that. Cade's jaw tightened, his fists clenched at his sides. For years he had told himself that power meant control, that if he simply pushed hard enough, fate would bend to fit his will. But standing there, watching the silver mark on Ilara's wrist glow brighter as she stood beside Draven, he finally understood a truth he had spent his whole life avoiding. Fate does not bend for kings. It answers only to the heart. The fight drained out of him all at once, leaving behind only exhaustion and a grief he did not know how to name. He thought of the boy he used to be, before the throne stole his ability to trust anyone, before fear of losing power turned him into a man capable of destroying his closest friend. He thought of all the years he had wasted chasing a prophecy instead of understanding what truly mattered. If I do not stand aside, Cade said quietly, the prophecy fails, and with it, every hope of ending this war. Then let it heal instead of fail, Ilara said gently. Let it end the way it was always meant to. Through protection, not conquest. Cade closed his eyes, When he opened them again, the anger was gone, replaced by something closer to sorrow, and beneath that sorrow, the smallest thread of relief. "Complete the binding," he said finally. "I will not stand in your way again." Beneath the ancient tree, as the first light of morning broke over the forest, Draven and Alara completed the ritual the old stories had spoken of for generations. Silver light spread from the tree outward across the land, reaching every pack, every territory, every wolf alive, carrying with it a peace that had not existed in centuries. Word spread quickly. The endless war between Blackthorn and Ravenwood, a conflict that had cost countless lives across generations, was finally over. Not because one side had conquered the other, but because love had done what violence never could. Cade did not return to his castle the same man who had left it. Stripped of the obsession that had ruled him for so long, he chose to step back from the throne he had once guarded so ruthlessly, allowing new leadership to guide Blackthorn toward the peace Alara and Draven had made possible. He spent his following years walking a quieter path, one built on rebuilding trust rather than commanding fear, becoming, in his own imperfect way, a guardian of the very peace he had once tried to prevent. As for Draven and Alara, they returned to the small cabin at the edge of the woods, where their bond had first begun, no longer hiding from a king's wrath, no longer running from warriors sent to tear them apart. They rebuilt what the war had broken, together, one gentle day at a time. Years later, wolves from both territories would tell the story to their children, not as a tale of kings and thrones, but as a reminder that even the fiercest enemy can become someone's greatest protector, and that the fate of an entire world can change simply because one person chose love over power, and another chose protection over pride. And beneath the old moon tree, where silver light still shimmered faintly on quiet nights, the story of the Alpha King's greatest enemy lived on, not as a legend of war, but as a promise that even the deepest wounds between enemies can heal, when someone finally chooses to stand between hatred and hope.